Okay.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kim Zadel with Decoding Dyslexia Idaho. I'm in charge of the professional development, and we are so thankful to have Rebecca Minetti here today to do part 2 of our trauma-informed culture, get the right title. And she is, besides being a very good therapist or whatever she wants to call herself, with working with children with trauma, she is a substitute teacher in the Valley View School District and is currently getting her credentials so she can be a full-time teacher, which we need good teachers like her. So I'm gonna let her take over because I know she has a lot to cram in tonight. And if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will monitor it and keep going. Okay, it's all yours, Rebecca.
All right, thanks, Kim. It's good to be back with everybody. We've got a lot to cover tonight, so we're gonna go ahead and get going. Well, maybe we'll get going if oh, there we go. Okay. I thought we'll just do like a real quick review from last time because it's been a little while. So in answering the question, basically, what is trauma? We talked about adverse childhood experiences. And basically, trauma is any kind of like psychological or emotional response to an event or an experience that's really distressing or disturbing. Trauma can also be defined as prolonged stress. So we had talked a little bit last time about how there's 3 aspects to trauma. One is the event itself, what actually happened. 2 is the experience that a person had in that event. I shared with you how I'm one of 7 kids, and it's incredible how all 7 of us, when we're sitting around sharing our memories, can talk about the same event, and all 7 of us will have actually experienced the event very differently based on our ages, our development, our personalities, our histories, all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to leave that out. An event itself isn't what necessarily can cause trauma. But so there's the event, the experience, and then the effects of that experience on somebody. So that's kind of what trauma is. And what we want to focus on tonight is how do we create a culture in our classrooms that meets the needs of kids who have experienced trauma, are experiencing high levels of stress. And what's so exciting about these strategies and things that I'm going to share with you tonight is these aren't different things that you have to do with those kids that have experienced severe trauma. They are strategies that work across the board for all kids because all children, actually all people, have the same needs. And this is about making sure that needs get met in a really safe and positive way. So I found this picture that I thought actually was super helpful. We talked a little bit about the brain last time and that upstairs brain and downstairs brain and how when you're experiencing trauma or stress, remember we talked about how like the lid flips and you go into fight, flight, or freeze. I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about the 9 a.m. brain versus the 3 a.m. brain. And I really loved that image of like, if you're walking down the street in your neighborhood at 9 in the morning and the neighbor's out walking the dog and the sun is shining and you feel relaxed and you feel safe and you wave to the neighbor who looks at you, makes eye contact. So you wave and you say hello and it feels good. You can be walking down that exact same street at 3 in the morning and your brain will be in a very different place. If somebody comes out of their house and is walking their dog at 3 in the morning and looks at you, the chances are you're not going to, oh, hey, it's so great to see you. You're much more likely to go into self-protective mode, to be afraid, all of those things. Well, when kids walk into our classroom, if they're in that 3 a.m. brain, we want to find strategies and ways to get them back into that 9 a.m. brain, a brain that feels safe, that feels like it's ready to learn and ready to be cared for. So I really love that, 9 a.m. versus 3 a.m. So what is trauma-informed care? We talked a little bit about these 3 principles of it. One is the idea of felt safety. I can tell a child that they're safe, but unless they feel safe, it almost doesn't even matter. So felt safety is very important. Connecting with a child is part of creating trauma-informed culture, and making sure that kids are getting the tools and the support they need to regulate on their own. And we'll talk a little bit about regulation later on, but you can always go back to the other video and review that as well. So let's just jump right into this next part. It's time to get curious. So the first thing I think that we need to remember is this: behavior is a language that we speak. So I'm going to say that again, because I think that that's really, really important. Behavior is a language that we speak. So when a child is responding well, doing what they're supposed to, they're communicating with you, I feel safe, I can learn, I feel connected. That is what they're communicating through their actions, through their behavior. When a child is hiding under the table, when they're saying no, when they won't do their work, when they're falling asleep in class, whatever it is, they are also communicating something with you. They're speaking a language. And one of our jobs as parents and teachers and educators is to learn how to interpret the language that the child is speaking to us. So that's why curiosity is very, very important. If we're not curious, we're not going to know how to meet their needs in appropriate and loving and positive ways. So the first thing to investigate, the first question is this behavior a sensory reaction, or is it behavior? Again, we're going to look at needs a lot, and this is the first thing to think through. And here's just kind of a really easy to understand little chart that can help you make some kind of quick, can help you, what's the word? Somebody give me the word. Decipher kind of what's going on. So if it's a sensory response, so it's high stress, whatever that is, whatever that sensory input is going in, that's keeping them either in fight or flight or freeze mode, you'll know it's sensory if the behavior continues regardless of who the audience is. So if a child's acting out regardless of its whichever adults in the room, whether kids are in the room, not in the room. So if the behavior is happening regardless of the audience, chances are it's a sensory need that needs to be met. Also, it can be sensory if it may continue after its remedy. Like you may be able to get them out of that and into something else, and then they go right back to that place. That can be an indicator that it's sensory. Another indicator that it's sensory will be that the child may not be able to verbalize their desire, or that desire might change, which means they can't communicate what it really is that they're needing. Another indicator that it's sensory is that they have a really hard time making eye contact with you. I watched a video of Dr. Karen Purvis, who we talked about last time too, and I watched it and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so simple, but I never would have thought about myself. There was a girl who was struggling in one of their camps, had kind of just like shut down, wouldn't talk to anybody, and Dr. Purvis went and sat down next to her and was trying to get to the root of what happened. And all of a sudden she stopped. She wasn't really getting anywhere with this little girl. And she stopped, and the little girl's legs were crossed. She was sitting with her ankles crossed. And she stopped in the middle of trying to figure out what was going on. And she said, hey, hon, can you uncross your ankles for me? And I'm watching this and I thought, why did you just interrupt trying to get to the heart of this behavior with like, why does it matter? Why does it matter whether or not her ankles are crossed? And what she described later on was that she asked that question, and it was an indicator on whether or not her lid had been flipped or whether or not she could actually learn. And when the little girl could not uncross her legs, Dr. Purvis was talking about how that was her indicator that what this little girl needed right now was just some quiet, some connection with another adult. It was not the time or the place to try to work through the behavior, because the little girl's brain, she was not regulated. She was in fight, flight, or freeze. Her lid was flipped. And until they could get the lid back flipped, it was a waste of time and energy to try to pursue anything else, which I thought to me was such a helpful. I did it with a little boy just yesterday in a kindergarten class I was subbing in. Their teacher went in for a routine doctor's appointment last week, and I was subbing for the morning. Teacher didn't come back after lunch because of a medical thing that happened. She's not coming back for 2 weeks. So they've had lots of different subs and without any warning. So these kids are kind of a little bit of a train wreck at this point. And when I stepped back in this Monday, one of the little boys was just he was under a table. I couldn't get him to come out. And I finally said to him, hey, can you put your hand on the floor for me? Because he like had his hands. And when he just like couldn't even respond to that, I thought, you know what, there's no need to pursue whether or not he's going to come out and do the assignment that I asked him to do. So I just said to him, you know what? Sounds like you're having a tough time. I'm gonna just let you sit under here until you feel safe enough that you're ready to come out. And he stayed under there for a little while. And when he came out, we could start to talk about why he was under there. So I thought that was a good example of understanding whether it's sensory or whether it's just they're communicating something to you. Sensory, they don't even know how to communicate. They don't know what they're communicating. So if it's a behavior, there'll be some sort of audience required. They're not going to be doing that same behavior if there's no one else in the room. It will cease when that need is met. Behavior, the child has a specific desire. They may not know how to communicate it right away, but as you work with them, they will be able to, and they have the ability to make eye contact. So hopefully that's just a good kind of gives you a list of things to kind of walk through that will help you decide what you're looking at. The next question, once you've decided, it's not sensory, it is behavior, then the next question really is like, what does this child need? Because behavior is communicating our needs. It's communicating how we want to connect with people. It's communicating, we're communicating our needs. We're trying to get needs met. And I think we talked about last time, if not, we'll get there in just a minute. But basically we all have two very primal human needs. And we're going to talk about those that will help us kind of decipher what the child is actually needing. But sometimes it's simple questions like start with your physical needs. Is this child hungry? Are they thirsty? Are they tired? Are they anxious? I knew stepping into that kindergarten class this week that those kids were going to be, they'd had 4 different subs in 4 days. I was finally coming back. The first thing they needed was to sit on the floor with me for the first 15 minutes. We did a very quiet activity together. We shared with each other. We told jokes to each other. We spent that first part of the morning connecting with each other. And I promised them I would do whatever I could to make sure they felt safe and loved. I acknowledged that it had been hard having different subs, and I let them talk about what was hard, what was fun having different people. They needed to connect. So asking those questions, is this child anxious, tired, hungry, thirsty, whatever it is. And I think it's important to remember, especially when you're working with kids with special needs or kids with learning disabilities, that you can't expect atypical behavior. You can't expect typical behavior from atypical development. So if you have a child with developmental needs, with learning disabilities, it's very, very important to pay attention to what your expectations are, and make sure that your expectations match what that child is capable of. All right, let's take a look at the ideal response. We're gonna actually watch a little video about it. But ideal stands for your response to the behavior needs to be immediate, needs to be direct, efficient, action-based, and leveled at the behavior and not the child. So we are going to watch a short little video by Dr. Purvis about this.
When a child from a hard place doesn't feel safe, the result is often behaviors that appear willful, baffling, and infuriating to caregivers. How we respond in these moments is critical, and TBRI has developed a guideline to help. The ideal response looks at the levels of behavior with the goal of moving the child to a calmer state. Immediate means dealing with misbehavior within 3 seconds. Meltdowns are a runaway train. A gentle word and often just the question, "I see you're upset, what do you need?" is enough to put on the brakes. Hunger, dehydration, and a need for sleep are often triggers. Direct isn't glancing up from your phone and yelling across the room. It's responding with direct eye contact, proximity, and reassuring touch when possible. Efficient stresses levels of a response using a kind voice and the fewest words. Caregivers should ask, what is this behavior saying? What does this child need? And how can I teach them to get these needs met? Action-based can offer a child a do-over. Instead of punishment, a calming, smiling voice saying, "Let's try that again," followed by praise can create an instructional path and a positive body memory. Leveled at behavior addresses the behavior, not the child, allowing the caregiver to be an advocate, not an adversary. When you're reactive instead of proactive, you put your energy in the wrong place and miss the opportunity for a teaching moment. Playful engagement works best when the behavior is at a low level. A redo can diffuse the situation quickly. A cheerful, "Can you try that again with respect?" can turn the tide when followed by praise. Structured engagement is needed when the situation has escalated and playful engagement has failed. If a meltdown ensues by offering the child a choice, they learn they have a voice. "Can I have a compromise?" said in a firm, calm voice, followed by "Good compromise," can introduce recognizable scripts a child can understand. When aggressive behavior looms, nothing is gained by responding in anger or isolation. Calming engagement says, "Here, come sit beside me. You seem to be having a hard time. You let me know when you're ready to talk." Remaining calm and keeping the child close changes the dynamic. When there's a potential for violence, protective engagement means first removing the child or others from the situation and letting them know that they're safe and not defined by their behavior. Helping the child to breathe and asking what they need can help restore calm. The foundation of TBRI is that behaviors are driven by fear and unmet needs, and when we avoid angry, punitive behavior ourselves, we open the door to better outcomes for our children.
I always feel like I never know how to get back. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So that's the ideal response. And all of those things are really, really great things to remember. And we're going to jump into some really practical things coming out of the research of Alfred Adler and Rudolf Dreikes, which is where the Positive Discipline by Jane T. Nelson. She has a number of books and I highly recommend all of them. She actually has one called Positive Discipline in the Classroom, which is a really, really wonderful book. And she's one called Positive Discipline A to Z that's almost like what's the word? Like if you want to look something up, you can look up a behavior and it'll give you some ideas of things to try. So really great practical stuff. But let's go ahead and take a look at this philosophy, which marries great with that ideal response coming from Dr. Purvis. So let's look at the principles of positive discipline. Remember how children are making decisions about themselves and how to behave based on how they see themselves in relationship to others and how they think others feel about them. It's important to remember that kids are constantly making decisions, forming beliefs about themselves, about the world, and about what they need to do to survive or thrive. So a misbehaving child is often trying to tell us, I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I matter. And I have some sort of mistaken belief on how to achieve it. So in positive discipline, there's this, and I first started studying this, it was about 18, 19 years ago. And it has not been proven wrong in my life yet, is that essentially all human beings have two needs that they're constantly trying to get met. Obviously there's food, water, all of those physical needs, but outside of that, we all have two needs: the need to feel like we belong and the need to feel like we're significant, like we matter. And it happens on all level and all relationships. So we're constantly making, especially relational and behavioral choices based on getting those two needs met. And if you don't believe me, next time you get a fight with a friend or a spouse, I dare you to start by asking yourself those two questions. Do I or my spouse not feel like we belong at this moment? Or do we not feel like we matter in this moment? I have found that even just remembering these two sentences when a child is misbehaving or when I'm struggling in any sort of relationship, if I can start by just asking myself those questions, it often will lead me in a good path. So I think it's important to remember that. And so when a child is misbehaving, it's because they have some sort of mistaken belief on how to get that need met. So here are the principles of positive discipline. The children are social beings and behavior is goal oriented. And their primary goal is to find belonging and to find significance. A misbehaving child is a discouraged child. I have also found that to be a very helpful tool to keep in the forefront of my brain. This child who was hiding under the table, I mean, this kid had a rough day. I'm not gonna lie, it was not our best day, but I was continually reminded, like, man, this kid is discouraged. He's stressed out because his teacher isn't here. That might be the only safe person in his life. You've got all these different teachers coming in who aren't following all the routines exactly the same. This kid's really discouraged, and they're trying to know how they belong in this different sort of environment from day after day after day. And that's very stressful. And they're trying to decide whether or not they belong as new adults are constantly coming in and out of this child's life. Another principle is dignity and respect for all. And the mistakes are opportunities to learn. I mean, what kind of incredible world would it be when every time a child made a mistake, they heard an adult say, "You made a mistake." That's fantastic. What can we learn from it? And I love that, because if a child in my classroom is really struggling and they made a mistake and I say, "What can we both learn from this?" I think that's really empowering from the child to recognize, like, I've got an ally here. I've got somebody that wants to help me grow, that wants to help me learn, that cares about my needs being met. And this grown up is willing to learn how to meet my needs better. I just think that that would be incredible. And to make sure the message of love gets through. Okay, so this is something that I tell people all the time. It's something that I try to never ever forget. But a main idea behind positive discipline is connection before correction. And if you'll remember back to how when we were talking about trauma before, we talked about connection as part of that trust-based relational intervention. That's one of the main tenets of it. And it's because connection disarms fear. So there is no way that a child is going to trust me to lovingly correct their behavior if I'm not already somehow connected to that child. There is no way that a child who has some old strategies of finding ways to thrive or survive, to feel like they belong, to feel like they matter, there's no way that they're going to set aside those ineffective means of getting those needs met and try new strategies just because I asked. If I'm asking them to give up all of their old strategies to try something new, I need to be connected to that child. I need to have a relationship. I need to be a safe person. So this is really, really helpful with the idea of, like, that's why teachers, when you greet a kid by name at the front door, you don't just let them all in the classroom. That tiny little moment of eye contact, saying their name, that's a moment of connection. It's like putting, it's like putting a piggy in the piggy bank, right? And every time I connect with that child in a really positive way, I'm building up a store that then when I need to correct that child, I'm basically kind of depositing out a little bit. I've got enough in there that they're still going to trust me when I'm all done correcting them. And so all of those little moments of positive connection add up to you being able to correct these misguided attempts to find belonging and to find connection. So some of the ways that we actually do this is one, and we'll take a look at some really specific stuff, but punishment versus discipline. We're going to look at being kind and being firm. We're going to look at connecting discipline versus distancing discipline. And we're going to take a look at playful interaction. But basically, guys, relationship, relationship, relationship. So punishment versus discipline. Punishment is a word that implies blame. It focuses on the past and on making sure that the child pays for their mistakes, while discipline focuses on solutions and helping a child learn from her mistakes. Discipline looks to the future, towards the skills and the attitudes that will prevent the mistakes and misbehavior happening again. So that's kind of the difference between punishment versus discipline. Being kind and firm. I love it's nurture versus structure. And if you've been in lots of different classrooms, you can always tell which teachers tend to lead with structure and which ones lead with nurture. You can tell which ones only have structure. You can tell which ones only have nurture. And what we're aiming for is a perfect balance of both. Kids need both the nurture, that's your relationship, and they need the structure. Kids need boundaries. It helps them feel safe. We all need boundaries. There's been a number of studies about anxiety, how anxiety is so high, and it's almost crazy to think like we're living in a society where we have more information, more choices, we're empowered in more ways than we ever have been before, and yet the anxiety levels are so high. And is that because there's just too many choices? There's too much information out there that it can cause anxiety. So there's a bunch of studies going on about that right now. And to me, it makes sense. Like, it's so much easier to just know, like, I just got to stay between here and here, and I'm safe and I can make decisions, but I know where the boundaries are. So that nurture and structure and finding a balance of both. So the question when you're looking at the behaviors, the question is always whether to lead with the firm or lead with the kind. So when you've got kids that have experienced high levels of trauma, are living under prolonged stress, sometimes they might need kindness long before they can handle the firmness. Sometimes they need you to lead with the firm and not the kind. And so that's why those connecting points in that relationship is really important. It helps you know which foot to lead with in each situation. But whichever goes first, you must follow immediately with the other, or there's no progress. There has to be both. And that can be hard. A good question always to ask, and I go back and ask myself it a lot, is where am I leading from? Or am I stuck in only one? You know, like, I'm tired and I'm cranky today, so I'm just leading with structure because I want everything to be quiet and I want everything to feel under control because I'm feeling out of control in my own life, or whatever it is. So it's really good. It's good self-awareness for me as the teacher to think through, am I being kind and firm? Am I doing both things in all of my interactions? So let's take a look at connecting discipline versus distancing discipline, or strategies, if you like that word better, connecting strategies versus distancing strategies. I'm just going to give some examples. They're not on the slide, but you can write them down if you'd like, or think through them. But some really obvious ones, when a child is misbehaving and you're trying to figure out what's going on or what to do about, what do I do about this? We want to connect first, not push kids away. Kids who are dealing with trauma, dealing with stress, they need to be brought closer. The instant I want to push a kid away is the moment that I need to stop and draw that child closer. Our natural tendency when a relationship is hard, when it's frustrating, is to distance ourselves from it, but we need to do the exact opposite. That's the moment that you draw the child close. That's the moment that you have them sit next to you. That's the moment that you have lunch with that kid. Whatever it is, they need connection. So some examples are, time out says, I'm going to send you away from everybody else. Time in says, I'm going to actually bring your desk closer to where I am. Same idea, bringing the child closer or sending him or her away. Again, if I'm angry or I'm stressed or I'm frustrated, my natural inclination is like, go sit at your desk, put your head down. I just can't deal with you right now. But that sends, if that child's need is to feel like they matter and to feel like they belong, I just took that away from them in an instant. And so by recognizing that they're trying to get those needs met somehow, and that's why I'm frustrated, but if I can just say, you know what, why don't you come sit right next to me? Or I'm going to stand close to you, or can I just kind of do you just need a hug? Can I give you a hug for a second? Is that what you need right now? Some way to bring them close instead of sending them away will help diffuse, because connection disarms fear. Another difference in connecting versus distancing is connecting focuses on a resolution. We're going to try to work hard to come up with a resolution to this problem versus just a consequence. A consequence is like, I just want to make you do this so that you feel like you paid for what you did, and then we're going to move on, which is very different than how do we solve this problem together so it doesn't happen again? How do we acknowledge what was the misguided strategy at getting your need met, and how can we help you find an appropriate way to get that need met next time? Which, guys, it takes more time. Takes more time, takes more energy. But at the end of the day, when you've got well-connected kids, they will heal, and things will get better. But you've got to put in the time on the front end. That's just the reality of it. I love this. A connecting strategy shows the child that you are their advocate, that you are for them, which means you're not getting rid of the relationship. You're not pushing them away. You're not just giving them a consequence so that everybody can move on with their day and feel justified or whatever it is. You're saying, I am for you. I am on your side. I want to help you discover what your needs are. And then I want to help find a way for you to get your needs met. I've got you. I've got you, and I'm going to help you regulate. I'm your advocate. Versus a distancing discipline or a distancing strategy is I am your adversary. It's you versus me, and one of us is going to win this battle, and it's going to be me because I'm the grown up and I'm the one that has all the power. So you're not going to get very far if that's your constant strategy that you're using to change behavior. Connecting discipline focuses on a child's preciousness, and a distancing discipline focuses on their failure. So again, that lens through which I'm looking at them. I can walk into a classroom and be like, man, I got that kid again. Ugh. Or, man, I'm so glad to see you today. I really care about you, and I hope that we can work together to make sure today's a great day. So the lens through which you're looking at the child with. And then connecting discipline focuses on praising their character, who they are, looking for ways to encourage them. And a distancing discipline or strategy can cause a lot of shame. And we want to avoid that, especially in kids that have experienced a lot of trauma, kids that have experienced a lot of stress or are living under a lot of stress. We want to avoid heaping shame on them. So let's look at the outcomes of how these two things kind of play out. So if I'm using a connecting strategy, I'm going to get corrected behavior. There's going to be contentment in the relationship. There's going to be connection between myself and the child, and it gets deeper because every time that child discovers, oh man, that person's going to help me succeed. That person is on my side. That person didn't abandon me. They didn't push me away. I can trust them. Talk about putting pennies in a bank, right? You're putting pennies in a trust bank every time you connect with them and help them through and don't give up on them. On the other side, sorry, these went backwards. But on the other side, if I'm using distancing strategies, the outcomes are going to look different. They're going to look like deferred behavior, just waiting to reemerge later on. They're going to look like discontentment in the caregiver and the child, the teacher and the child, and disconnection. You're deepening the disconnection, which the deeper the disconnection goes, the further you are from being able to meet their needs in a way that's helpful to them anyway. You're deepening a divide. So I have found those things really helpful when I have a child who's misbehaving, when I'm struggling to try to figure out what to do with behavior in the classroom, to think through, like, is my decision right now creating connection, or is it creating distance between me and the kids? So in that video, after they talked about the ideal response, they talked about different kinds of engagement. And one of them they talked about was playing. And I love this. We're going to watch a little video, but I love this statistic so much. Research shows that it takes 400 repetitions of an act or learning skill to get one new synapse in the brain. So for the brain to learn something new, it takes 400 repetitions to do that. However, research also shows that it takes only 12 repetitions with joy and laughter to get a brain synapse. because joy and laughter releases the chemical dopamine. Joy and laughter releases fear, it disarms fear. So playful connections disarm fear. And as a teacher, I would rather do something 12 times and have everybody laughing than do something 400 times and everybody be miserable. So it's not always possible to be playing through everything, but to even just have like a playful spirit about you. I don't know if you've ever been in a classroom or watched a teacher who's playful in their interactions with the kids, and it's almost like magical to watch. My daughter, I have a 7th grader, and her English lit teacher, I mean, 7th grade, right? I've been subbing 7th grade. They're a whole nother breed, those little darlings. And they can be tough and they can have a tough exterior on them. And she has the highest expectations out of all of my daughter's teachers. And yet she is the most beloved by all of the students because her kids know that she is for them, and she interacts with them in a playful, funny. They were writing something and it was something about farting. I mean, it was absolutely absurd, but they were learning these wonderful things, but she just met them on their level, and it was really fantastic. So I do want to watch this little video. Once we started, I'm gonna fast forward just a tiny little bit, but this is Dr. Karen Purvis again, and their work down at TCU. They do a camp working with some really difficult kids. Most kids that are in foster care have severe trauma. And they do this camp with them called Hope Connection. And she's going to be talking a little bit about how play is one of the main tenets of how these children find healing and how these children find new ways to behave. So let's take a look at this. I'm just going to fast forward a little bit in. Okay.
The needs of others. They may kind of withdraw.
Whoops.
Another thing that parents sometimes tell us.
Their Hope Connection Camp provides families with real promise for healing.
Ready, buddy? Say, walk on. Keep going. Use those strong arms. I know you got them. Good job.
Camp consists of nurturing games and activities designed to connect with children on a very core level.
1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And the key ingredient is play.
In our camp environment, we do a lot of play. Good old physical play. But possibly the most important aspect of play in our camp environment is that it is completely permeated with what we call playful engagement. And that is that every interaction that's possible to be playful is playful. I'm going to come get you a bag of dress up clothes, okay? Fair enough? Fair enough. Ooh, I love that. Fair enough. We talk to the children in a playful mode. We interact with them in a playful mode. We correct them when we can in a playful mode. Okay, now, guys, I shouldn't be hearing anybody's voices but my own. Let me count my potatoes. Let's see, I have 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4 potato. Virtually everything that we do is permeated with an attitude that is playful.
In this healing environment, children learn to feel powerful, precious, and safe.
If a child experiences loss early in life, that will always be with you. That never goes away.
A primary goal is to teach the parent the skill set that we've learned through research. And at the foundation of a great portion of that skill set is play. They could get married and raise lots of sweet violets. We use playful engagement in our camp to achieve our most important goals. We use play to connect with a child. We use play and playful interaction to engage a child. We use play to attune to a child, to follow them and see what they like and what they don't like. We use play to teach social skills. We even use play to correct our children. And we use play to reconnect with them after they've been corrected. Play in its sweetest, most tender forms permeates all that we do in camp. One of the things that we say in our work is that a child who doesn't get to use their voice to have their needs met is going to be at far greater risk to use aggression and violence and control and manipulation to get their needs met. So play has a very important part in breaking that cycle and in bringing about the use of healthy social skills.
I don't know about you, but sometimes I forget how to be playful, especially when I'm feeling stress, especially when I'm feeling like I'm not meeting expectations, especially when, the last thing I want to do, if half of the class like won't buckle down and get the work done, the last thing I want to do is play a game. The last thing I want to do is be playful. I feel like I need to pull out the stern voice and pull out the finger and, whatever it is. And yet, what I have seen, obviously, it's working for them really well and what research shows, and I can just speak from my own experience, is that if a class is not on task, if there are kids that are really struggling, instead of saying, okay, everybody be quiet, we're going to put our heads down and be quiet for a minute until you can figure out how to focus, I'll say, you know what, let's play a game. Everybody stop what you're doing, let's play a game. And it, number one, kind of shocks it out of them, like, whoa, wait a minute, you're supposed to get angry here, or you're supposed to get really firm here, you're supposed to get really mad here, and you're saying we get to play a game? And I'll say, yeah, let's play a game. And one that I often do, because as a sub, you're generally fighting against just like chattiness in the classroom, is we'll play quiet ball together. And I don't care what age they are, but across the board, they never get tired of quiet ball. It doesn't matter what age they are, they want to play it. We can play it for 5 minutes or 20 minutes. And it's incredible to me how, when it's wrapped up in a game, they can use absolute silence and absolute self-control. And so all I'll say is, you know what, guys, I can tell we're having trouble focusing on the lesson. Let's take a break for a minute and we're going to play quiet ball. And I let them sit on their desk and we toss the ball to each other and they can't talk and all this kind of stuff. If you want to know the rules to quiet ball, I'll let you know. But then when we're done with it, I can say to them, you know what, guys, you just showed me that you can use self-control. You just showed me that when you're ready and when you think that you want to do something, you can focus and you can be quiet. And they're like, whoa, you just tricked us with a game. But it works over and over again. It's disarmed all the stuff in the room and then we buckle back down and do it together. Or like, everybody stand up and somebody tell me a funny joke. Just disarm the air in the room. If the air is feeling tense, if the air is feeling tight, use playful interaction. It disarms fear and it builds connection, which will help meet the kids' needs. And when their needs are met, your needs are met as well, because then they're ready to learn. So what does a trauma-informed culture look like? Some really practical things that, again, you can decide what you want to use in your classroom. Maybe it's something you work on together as a school or as a team of teachers. Having a shared language amongst teachers can be really powerful in a school culture. So using language like, can you show me how to do that in a way that's gentle and kind? So if a kid, grabs a paper really fast or pushes somebody in line, hey, would you like to do that again? And maybe you can do it gentle and kind this time and see what they do. Or the phrase, using your words. Can you use your words? Even the phrase, and again, think playful interaction, like, hey, can you remind me who the boss is today? Can you remind me who the teacher is today? Oh, you are. Yeah, so can you trust me to help you do whatever? I'm using the phrase like, hey, can you do that again, but with respect? Would you like a do-over, but this time with respect? Using the phrase cooperate and compromise, that we're working together. So how can we cooperate to get this assignment done? And how can we compromise to get this assignment done? So the actions behind that, so you might have this shared language of like, what does this language look like? What are phrases that feel like they'll be helpful in the classroom that we can use on a really consistent basis so the kids know that they're coming? The actions that can go along with that is stuff like choices. Especially kids who've experienced trauma, especially kids that have learning disabilities, developmental disabilities, kids that are living under a tremendous amount of stress at home, letting them have some sort of power over their lives will go a long ways. And so just saying like, hey, and not like you have two choices, right? I could say it like that. Or I could say, you know what? We got to get this paper done. So I'm going to give you two choices. You can go get a drink of water and then do your paper, or you can do your paper and then go get a drink of water. Which one would you like to do? And I've chosen two choices that are both acceptable to me as a teacher, both accomplish what I need to accomplish as a teacher, but gives the child the power to decide what they're going to do. So anytime you can give choices, it's a really empowering thing to do for the kids. It shows that they matter, their voices are heard, their voices matter. That's an important part of that significance. And that belonging, right? When you belong someplace, you feel like you have a say in what goes on there. And then compromises. Hey, would you like a compromise? Like I had, same little guy, you could tell it was a rough day the other day. Same little guy had a paper to do from his phonics workbook, and he was just sitting there, wouldn't do it. And I had one of the, the smelly markers. So I'm walking around the class, and when they're done with it, they get a little smiley face on it and they all want to smell it. And I walk by and I'm like, bud, can you, write some beautiful E's for me so that I can give you a smiley face that you can smell? And he looked up at me and he said, maybe I could write my E's if I used that marker. And I said, sure. It's not going to hurt anybody if he uses that marker. It's just kind of a compromise. The paper gets done, he practices his E's, right? So my agenda is being met and he feels empowered to kind of do it his own way. An easy peasy compromise, everybody wins. So anytime that you can say like, hey, is there a compromise? Can you think of a compromise? Can I think of a compromise? How can we both like give up a little bit to get our needs met? And then behavioral redos are huge. And again, you can say with a playful tone, somebody's talking in the hallway like, hey, can you do that again? Would you like a redo? Yeah, it's just a really simple, most kids know when especially in a classroom that standards have been laid out, expectations have been laid out. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They don't need a lecture. They don't need a consequence. It can just be as simple as like, would you like to try that again? Would you like a redo? I use it with my own kids all the time. It's very helpful. So that in terms of creating a culture that shows that you're informed in what kids who've experienced trauma need, hopefully these things are really helpful. So let's take just a minute and we're going to look at some mindfulness strategies, which just means that me as the teacher, I need to be all in. I've got to set it all outside the door, and my attention needs to be on the moment. In the classroom when I'm teaching one-on-one, when I'm with a student who's struggling. So those are mindfulness strategies, like paying attention to myself, where my own heart, where my own mind is. The kids know whether or not you're present, and it will go a long way if you're fully present with them. Again, it tells them that they matter, tells them that they belong. Engagement strategies, nurturing healthy connections, which we've talked about, and facilitating those secure attachments. We've talked about those. And then those attunement strategies of what does this child need? What does this baby need? How can I help them? So here are 5 questions to ask yourself. Number 1, am I connected? Am I connected with this child? If I'm not, what can I do right now to connect with them before they need some correction? Have I connected? Have I said their name today? Have I made eye contact with them today? Have I even connected with them at all? That's the first question I always ask. Am I empowering them in getting their needs met and my needs met? Again, that's where those choices come in, those compromises come in, because again, that empowering tells them you belong here, so your voice matters, and you're significant. You're significant. You matter. What you think, what you feel, what you need matters. So I'm going to empower you to help you find ways to get those needs met. Am I teaching proactively? I can teach reactively, usually isn't super successful for a very long period of time. So am I teaching proactively? Am I thinking through when I'm planning a lesson, when I'm planning an activity, am I thinking through behaviorally, what kind of environment do I need to set up for these kids? Am I well organized? Have I thought through the questions that are going to be asked? Have I thought through the flow of the lesson or the movement or whatever it is so that things go smoothly? Am I teaching proactively or reactively? Number 4, am I catching it at low level 1? Am I catching the behavior before it explodes? Because at that really low level, that's where playful engagement works really well, where just maybe a hug or a high five or standing in close proximity can oftentimes change everything. So trying to have that, we call it kind of court awareness, right? Court awareness is when I kind of know what's going on all around me, even if I have my eyes right here. Like I'm very aware of the environment so that I can catch stuff. And do I have a plan for calming engagement? Have I thought through, if this escalates, if this child comes in today is having a bad day and we're not getting anywhere, do I have some sort of plan to help them regulate, to help them get that lid unflipped? What's my plan? What do I have to try so that in that moment when I'm feeling stress and it's hard to make those decisions, I already have a plan. So we're almost done. Remember, always choose relationship over activity. Your own regulation is your best calming tool. I have my youngest toddler, we said, was like having 5 toddlers. And it was something I had to very actively think through all the time as a parent. Am I taking on all of her energy? Am I taking on her anger? Am I taking on her anxiety? Am I absorbing hers? Or am I offering my own calmness to her? So if I can stay regulated, I'm much more likely to help a child calm down. But if I get anxious, if I get stressed out, if I get scared, that is not going to help the situation at all. So working hard on my own regulation and noticing it is really important. Do not expect typical behavior from atypical development. Extend compassion. Man, these kids are going through a lot right now. They're going through a lot. This class that I was subbing, again, the teacher's gone for a while. I couldn't take all of the days. Fortunately, we kind of worked it out where I was able to talk to the sub who was going to be there today when I couldn't be. And she was a teacher, but didn't have a lot of experience with some other things. And I said, you just need to remember that what these kids have gone through in the last week, losing their teacher at the last minute, having 4 different grownups in here, kids being in and out, even the classroom dynamics are so different with so many kids sick each day. Like they need your compassion and their empathy before they need anything else. And then your day will go better. So extending compassion to kids who are struggling will go a long way. Teaching through positive reinforcement rather than negative punishment, those connecting strategies rather distancing strategies. Teaching through example rather than shame. And keep encouraging and keep trying. Don't give up. Don't give up on yourself and don't give up on the child because we're all learning, we're all growing, we all have bad days, we all make mistakes, and all of them are opportunities to grow and learn and to do that through connection. And the deeper the connection grows with that child, the more they will be able to heal, the more they'll be able to get their needs met in an appropriate way, and the more successful your time with them in the classroom will be. So look at that, right on time. I just wanted to put in here a couple of slides with some resources for you, which is where a lot of this information was taken. So The Whole Brain Child is an excellent book. The Connected Child is another really excellent book talking about trauma and the brain. These are those positive discipline books that I was telling you about by Jane Nelson. I highly, highly recommend them. They're easy to read. There's some really, really great tangible things that you can try in the classroom to build connection. I think there's a whole chapter in there about class meetings. And there's actually a very specific way to run class meetings that fosters connection and empowerment and making sure that kids know that they belong and they matter. And they work across all ages. So these are books that I really recommend to have in your tool belt. They will help a great deal. It's just really good information that's easy to digest. This book came out this last year and I thought it was really fascinating. So Thrivers. Surprising reasons why some kids struggle and others shine. These I just thought were cute. So they're there with just some ideas of an upstairs brain and a downstairs brain. And I actually found both of these images just on Google. So they're probably posters that you can get. I just thought they were really great. Some of you've probably seen this. I've seen this in classrooms a number of times. They'll have kids come into the classroom and just show them with a hand sign, or they'll have a paper on their desk with this on it, and the kids can circle where they're coming in for the day, which is great because not only is it giving you some awareness of how the day might go for a child, but it's actually teaching them to be aware of where they're at. And that's half the battle. When you're talking about getting a child to a place of self-regulation, this can be a huge tool for them to have. So that's it. You did it. Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you, Rebecca. Please, if you have questions, you can unmute because we have a small group here. One of the things you mentioned is that connection. I'm working with student teachers, and one of them, every Monday, he asks the students to tell him 2 things that happened over the weekend that were good or bad, maybe. Most of the time, the ones I heard were all good. And how's the day going? And he has these kids about the middle of the day, and middle school kids.
Yeah.
And he says it really makes a big difference because a lot of these kids, the trauma happens over the weekend because of the home environment. And so just letting them know that, hey, we can talk, we can share it. And he usually does at the beginning of class. When I was there, I think he was kind of off because here I am observing, but he remembered halfway through and did it. And the kids really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think, if the class is struggling on a day and you're just noticing things feel off, again, giving yourself permission to throw a lesson out the window or set it aside from it and do something that will reconnect everybody, whether it's like a sharing thing or a game that creates laughter, that, when things are feeling unsettled or feeling stressful, think about connection. Like maybe we just all need to reconnect with each other right now. Let's play a game. Let's sit in a circle and chat. Let's, whatever it is. When I go, especially when I go in the middle school to sub, I always start with like, hey, you can ask me any 3 questions about myself that you want, but as a class, you only get 3 questions because usually they're sitting in groups too. So you've got to decide. I'm gonna give you like 3 minutes to decide on what kind of question, what do you really want to know about me or about my life or whatever. And it's really funny because then they'll start working in groups trying to think like, oh, we don't want to waste a question on that. What do we really want to know? And they'll come up with really creative stuff, but all it does is it's like some laughter and some smiles. We've connected in some sort of way, and the class always goes better. If I forget to do that, I can tell the difference. So yeah, connection, connection, connection.
Yeah, it is